Hello. We're going to talk once again about listening comprehension. This time we're going to talk about overall listening comprehension based on 3 aspects, and I'm going to give you some tips. And Susmita is going to come on up and help me with this first part. So we're going to talk this time about overall speed, based on the fact that accents are different between Indian English and Canadian English, as we talked about last time, and therefore students are still learning to understand the Canadian accent, but also talking a little bit about vocabulary. Sometimes unexpectedly you'll run into words that are different. And for example, these are things that I've run into. Susmita, what's this?
That's scale.
A scale, okay. And what's this? Well,
That's gutter.
that was a
Garter.
Okay, now it's a broken rubber band. Okay, and what's this?
James scale.
Okay, and a little bit off topic, but what is this?
Capsicum.
And what's this?
Chili.
All right, so some examples of various items that just have a different name for them, has evolved in different English-speaking settings. So another aspect, though, that can really make a difference in the classroom is idioms. And so there are a lot of sort of everyday idioms that are very common in North America that may not actually be used in another part of the world. Susmita, can you give us a couple of examples of 2-word verbs that you've never heard before or didn't know what they meant before you came?
That's first one is make up.
Make up. Okay.
Put away.
Put away. Okay. Okay.
Do over.
Do over. So you had not heard these before?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
So for example, if your students do poorly on assignment and you tell them they can have a do-over, they're not actually going to know what that means unless you explain it. Or if there's a test about to take place and you tell them to put their calculators away, they may not automatically know what you're asking them to do. Some examples of why in the classroom you do your best to avoid idioms. Okay? Another thing you can do in the classroom to help with this problem, with speed, is quite simply to slow down. Now that doesn't mean you should slow down to a crawl or speak unnaturally, but it does mean that maybe you're going to pause more, as we talked about in the last video, pausing between key ideas and talking just slightly slower than maybe an everyday conversational style. Okay, so what's a third thing that you can do to help your students? Well, one thing you could do to help your students is to repeat key ideas. Repeating, number 1, slows you down, and number 2, gives the students a chance to process the most important things that you're talking about in your lecture. Another tip that's closely related is also about key ideas, and that is to write them down. Write keywords on the board, even if they're on your slide. It helps to reinforce what's important, and it helps ensure that the student is following you and understands what you're saying. One last suggestion with respect to helping your students understand you. And again, this one is based on feedback that Susmita has been getting from her fellow students, that they can't often hear this, the teacher, and they wish that the professor would speak more loudly. And this doesn't mean you need to yell. But what it does mean is, rather than aiming your voice at the front row, you aim your volume and the strength of your voice at the person at the back. The person who's sitting the farthest away from you. You think in terms of how loudly do I need to speak in order to make sure that that student is heard. So those are the suggestions in order to help students to improve their listening comprehension while they get used to the Canadian accent. avoid idioms, slow down, repeat key ideas, and in order to repeat those key ideas, also write down the key words and speak loudly enough for everyone in the room to hear.